Hello, everyone. I want to talk about the housing bubble. I've mentioned the housing bubble before, but I'm watching, there's a new interview on therealnews.com, a website I've just found. Many of you already are aware of it. It's an interview from Charmini Paris and Michael Hudson. Charmini, she's a journalist for The Real News, and she does an interview with Michael Hudson, who is a professor of economics at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and he's the author of the book The Bubble and Beyond and Finance Capitalism and Its Discontents. His most recent book, Killing the Host, How Financial Parasites and Debt Bondage Destroy the Global Economy. I haven't read any of those books, but he brings up some interesting points, and I'll put the link below. I like The Real News. I'm just getting turned on to them. One of the things they do is they show the video of the interview, and then they also put transcripts below so you can go into the specifics of what people say. And while I've talked about this before, Michael Hudson goes into some things I wasn't aware of about this housing bubble versus the one in 2007, 2008. Now, there's a lot of similar things that are happening, which is home prices were going up, obviously, in 2007, 2008. The national average is kind of back up to the 08, the pre-crash 08 levels. I can tell you here in Southern California, that's very, very accurate. And so what the indicators are, so the real estate is going up to 2008 levels, and credit card debt is up, car loan debt is up, overall debt is up, student loan, more people are defaulting on student loans, which I did a story on that. One of the patrons suggested that story to me. And so all those indicators happening, here's what's different. So the crash, 10 million people, over 10 million people lost their homes. As I've talked about before, I was one of them. And what happened was giant hedge funds groups, like they refer to it here, Blackstone, bought up a lot of this housing and realized they could make more money renting it out. So now rents are way up. And I can absolutely tell you that's the case in Los Angeles. That is like, there are parts of Los Angeles that are now more expensive than Manhattan. And if you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, forget about it. Like, people are moving from the Bay Area down to LA because LA is cheaper, which is something I never thought I'd hear in my life. So that's what's making this even more dangerous. So people have more debt again, but we have less homeowners. And as Noam Chomsky talked about in that documentary, Requiem for the American Dream, is the banking industry doesn't care if there's another collapse because they'll get bailed out. Obama bailed them out. Bush bailed them out. Nothing new will happen. So the thing and I'll read some of the transcripts here from Professor Hudson here. So he bought, those companies like Blackstone bought everything for full cash. Now, the reason they did that, and this is his words now, the reason they did that instead of debt leveraging, which is how people have been buying their houses in World War II, is the interest rates are low. The Fed was plunging at zero interest rate policy in order to try to reinflate a bubble. But with these low interest rates, Blackstone and other hedge funds, Wall Street, could make more money renting out these properties than they could actually selling them or speculating them, or that they could make in the bond market. The effect is very interesting. Leading up to 2008, rents were actually going down. The more real estate prices were going up, the lower rents were falling because 17% of the market was by flippers. That was a big thing that was happening. From like 2000 through 2007, early 2008, people were buying houses and flipping them because the market kept going up. That we learn now was, part of it was manufactured. But so the flippers, people were buying a house for whatever, $200,000, putting $10,000 in work into it, and selling it down the road for $280,000, $300,000, or whatever the thing was. In some cases, they didn't even do any work. They just bought it, held onto it for 10, 12, 18 months, and then sold it again. as Hudson refers to as speculators who borrowed to buy an apartment and they thought, okay, we're going to buy a condo, buy a house, we're going to wait for the price to be inflated. They were all desperate to find somebody to live in these apartments, at least help cover the interest expense of buying these things. The result of that was the rents fell. Right now, it's exactly the opposite. The rents are going way up because there's much less property available either to buy or to rent. People can't afford to qualify for the bank loan, so they can't afford to buy housing, and they can't find rental apartments because they have been monopolized maybe 20% in some areas by hedge funds and Blackstone and other people. My friend, this is again quoting Hudson, not Graham, Michael Hudson's friend, you get it? My friend Gary Null, for instance, had Blackstone buy his building, smash the furnace, wouldn't turn on the heat, and force them to move out so it could empty out the property and try to raise that price that's on commercial real estate. So these guys are really putting the price war back in business. Housing prices are going up in Canada and Australia, but again, it's not so much a bubble like it was before. It's a shift of the whole financial structure has shifted. This is key, largely because it's being bought by very wealthy absentee owners instead of by the population as a whole. And so the rate of home ownership in America has fallen by about 6 percentage points. That was the biggest thing about America. That was how you could have upward mobility. That's how you could be born poor or middle class and work your way up. Buying a home, it appreciates in value. You sell that house and you get a house in a better neighborhood, and that appreciates in value. And then you know, when you pass away or whatever, you retire, you have these houses that are worth, and you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity, $500,000 in equity, and you pass that on to your kids or whatever. That was what grew the middle class in America. And again, banking regulation helped that happen, but now less people are buying homes. As I talked about numerous times from my own experience and that Dave Dane article, Obama gave hundreds of billions of dollars on top of the Bush TARP money to the banks, and then he let them regulate themselves. And because they were making money doing derivatives and bundling these things and selling them off, in the old days, like the old savings and loan, it behooved a bank to try to keep you in your house. A foreclosure was bad for the bank. Right? If I'm a bank and you have a house and you can't make your payment and you lose, then that's bad for me, the banker. Now it's good. Bundle them up. The government will bail you out. And they're crushing the middle class. They are crushing this country. And they're just, it's happening all over again. You know? And they make a bigger return from renting it out. And here's the thing, they can make 5, 10, 15%, and that's much more money than they can make in the bond market, and it's much more secure money than they can make in the stock market, because stock prices may go down and corporate sales may go down as the economy shrinks, but people are always desperate to have housing. It's the one thing they absolutely need. So rents are now rising at as a percent of the American budget. They're 40% to 50%, places like New York, San Francisco, rents are the highest in the country. One other thing that's changed was powering and pushing up prices in 07 and 8 were loans to borrowers with no income, no jobs, and no assets. As Bill Black has explained on your show, that was the last Real News article Bill Black was on there, they're largely fraudulent loans. The frauds were the banks. The frauds were the mortgage companies that just faked the incomes of the buyers and would lend for almost the entire mortgage. Now, we have one kind of ninja theft, and those are the students. The student loans have been the most rapidly growing loans in the country. They're about 1.3 trillion, more than credit card loans, more than most other kinds of loans. And everybody knows that the students are not able to earn enough to repay them because default rates on student loans are going way up. They're not going up on mortgages. They're falling on mortgages, home mortgages, but they're rising on student loans. But the banks knew they couldn't pay, and the government knew they couldn't pay, so the government made a sweetheart deal with the banks. You can make all the loans to students you want. You can lend them as much money for an education, even for a junk education, for junk colleges, for-profit colleges like Trump's college, and we know that students are going to default, but we're going to guarantee your loans, and we'll guarantee a higher rate of interest than you can make on any other loan because we're going to charge a high risk. This whole student loan scandal is corrupt. It's more corruption, and it's more reasons why we need real progressives and why fuck any pro-banking people, especially the Democrats. This is one of the reasons why I could never vote for Hillary in a million years, or Chuck Schumer, or any of those assholes. This crap. There's going to be a housing bubble again. It's going to, well, there is a housing bubble. I mean, it's going to burst again. The economy is going to nosedive in the next probably 12 to 18 months. From everything I'm reading, it's brutal. And will the banks be punished? Nope. I hate to say this, but it feels like it's going to get worse before it's going to get better. But read the whole thing and stay informed. And if you're a homeowner, man, make sure you can pay your bills, man. Rent the place out, rent out a room, whatever. Because if anything happens, if you lose your job, watch out. I wish I would have started renting my condo out 7 or 8 months before the crash happened. Right when I started to have just the inklings of financial trouble, I wish I could have rented it out because I probably would still own it. And now I would sell it because I would see this coming. I would sell it because it's going to crash. Oof. Thanks for watching, you guys, and thanks for supporting independent media. Places like Real News, Political Vigilante, Jimmy Dore Show, Young Turks, Secular Talk, Sane Progressive, Humanist Report, shows like that. You're supporting alternative media because the mainstream is going to, if they do cover this, they're going to cover it in some flim-flammy pro-bank way. Or they'll cover it and then right up will be a commercial for like mortgage freeness or whatever. Bank, ooh, Capital One. And there's Jimmy Fallon being all cute and funny, telling me to get his Capital One thing. Or there's Samuel L. Jackson. Isn't he so funny? Get a Capital One Visa or whatever. Oh, boy. Let's do what we can. Stay vigilant. Keep the blue light on for justice.